Welcome everyone to this webinar on health rhythms and adapting the protocol to special needs. I'm Christine Stevens, and we had 135 people register for tonight's call. I mean, usually about half or less than half can physically make it, but people are looking forward to receiving the recording. The audio and the video will be made available. And I also made a couple of free bonus gifts for you all for being on this call, including a session plan that I did for a young adult group in recovery that can give you some ideas for ways to adapt it. But already someone offered a cool idea before we even started the call, which was Susie, who wrote a poem for her Health Rhythms group, and I thought I would put her on the spot and see if she'd be willing to read it. Please say yes.
I cannot turn you down.
Okay, good. I'll accompany you.
Okay. Yes. Oh, all right. Women's Palandaba. We all have a different walk in life, and many have different beliefs. If you feel alone and you want to give up, come to Palindaba for relief. Palindaba is a place of great gathering, a place where great women come. We share our lives, we share our hearts through the beating of a drum. Palindaba, Palindaba. When you're feeling extra happy and you want to jump and shout, share your spirit, come to drum. That's what Palindaba is about. We are holding space for you deep inside our hearts. Let us share your journey. Let us be a part. Let us in and offer strength, a place where you can come. Sing our songs and share our pulse. Release your essence through the drum. Palindaba is a place of great gathering, a place where great women come. We share our lives, we share our hearts through the beating of a drum. Palindaba, Palindaba, a place where great women come. That's it.
Big Zoom applause coming your way. So that's a great example of an adaptation, right, to her population. So I wanted to take, if you're new to Zoom, I wanted to just take a minute to explain how Zoom works. Susie, thank you so much. That was so heartwarming. It just, poetry speaks the language of the soul, and I think it really puts us all right into that space in a beautiful way. So if you've ever wanted to get creative with your group, write them a poem. It becomes an invocation. It could be a closing, and the group could echo it, call and response. There's so many ways you can use a poem, you know, call and response, play over a kalimba, lots of ideas. This is the kalimba I use a lot. A lot of you know how much I love this. It's called the Sansula, and it's made with a Remo drum head. So that's why it's really poignantly able to speak. And there's no wrong note. Vibrato. So that's a really nice accompaniment for guided imagery drumming as well. So if you're new to Zoom, basically how this works is there is a chat bar. You can probably see the little word chat at the bottom of your screen. If you click that, you'll see me typing messages to you all, and you can type messages. If you're on the phone, you can't type messages, but thank you for listening. We have quite a few people calling in. 6 people calling in by phone. It was so exciting to see who registered for the call. I saw people from all different countries, people from positions from spiritual directors to music therapists to nurses, such a very wide variety of people on the call. Good. You can type your name in there and where you're calling from. That'd be very fun so we can see who's here. So basically I've muted everyone, and if you want to speak, you can raise your hand, or I will maybe have you put on the chat bar. I think on the phone it's *6. Okay, and tonight, thanks to, first of all, Alyssa Janney. Big thank you to Alyssa Janney, who organized this webinar. She did all the administration of it, to coordinate it. She's also been doing all the hard admin to create this now in its 3rd year, monthly mentoring for Health Rhythms. And I saw Brad is on the call, and Brad took the class last year. If you anything you want to say about it, please say something good.
Well, of course. I apologize. I would have liked to have recorded a video for you, but a lot of things happened all at once and so forth. Anyway, anyone who has not taken any of the mentoring classes should really consider that. It's really valuable information, very cost effective, by the way, and it kind of helps push you along, gets you to places that you may not have thought about previously. And, if you're working a lot, and I'm working a lot, sometimes there's that burnout factor where you're just kind of going, okay, I've got to come up with something. And sometimes it's a little easier have gone through the sessions. And I constantly refer to my notes, the handouts that you provided for that too. So I just have that with me with my training manual. Those are the things that I always have with me. So 5 minutes in the car, just zip through it, and it solves a lot of problems actually. So yeah, I'd encourage anyone to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brad has a very busy business working in senior care.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles area.
Yeah, I had a really interesting thing last week. There was a lady drumming, and I had known that she had drummed previously as a child and probably in a youth band. And the drumming always kind of had spoken to her a little bit, and her daughter was observing from the back. And as I was packing up and rolling my stuff out, she said, I just got to tell you how much I appreciate this type of program. It really taps into something to my mother that's been deeply inside her. And then she said she even asked to buy me a drum. So I said, I'm pretty sure that, if you get one of the Comfort Sound drums, I'm sure they would allow it, even if it's just to tap at just a little bit. But she, her mom wanted a drum of all the things. And I mean, she's in a wheelchair. She's really hunched over, not too verbal, but she asked her daughter for a drum. So how about that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is the best story. So nice to start off with a good story. Scott Swimmer's here too. Drum strong, at least it says so. Oh, good, Rufus. I wanted to just say Rufus also took the course. Anything you want to say?
It was not just great to benefit from Christine's wisdom, but to really benefit from the combined experience and knowledge of the group. We learned so much from the trainings. We learned so much more, I think, from doing it, and then learning even more from each other. So, and I really appreciate it. I think we had, I don't know if we call them accountability buddies, but we were paired off with other people who sort of encouraged us to move forward on some of our projects, to approach new groups and to tweak what we've already done, and that was really helpful too.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you.
Likewise.
Rufus contributed so many great ideas in the group. His themes of working with women with cancer survivors and such were very inspiring for all of us. So it's good to see you. So tonight I've organized a little webinar to show you how the mentoring experience works. You're hearing a little bit from folks who've been in it, but basically I started it 3 years ago with the inspiration of knowing that the real training starts when you leave the training. Wouldn't you say? I mean, it really begins when you get out there, you start doing groups. Now you have a bunch of questions and the trainers are gone. So it really was my desire to do something that was more affordable and accessible using this platform of Zoom. And in fact, I think when we began, we were just using the phone calls. So now we have video conferencing, which is phenomenal, so that we can really cover these key, I just chose 9 topics. I do it one time a month because I feel like 9 months is an incubation process. So if you're committed to taking Health Rhythms to the next level, whether it's the marketing of it, selling it, or it's just the doing of it, we cover a lot of these topics. Becky Watson is also here, and she was in the group too.
Hey, Becky.
You want to say anything, Becky? I know she's here. In case you want to speak, Becky, you can jump in anytime. Wave at me. All right, so then let me get to tonight's point. The topic is, how do we adapt the Health Rhythms program to special groups? So I'm starting to see more and more people typing in where they're calling from. This is great. Welcoming North Dakota, wow, Canada, Arizona, Montana. I love it. You know, Health Rhythms, we've trained over 3,000 people in 27 countries worldwide. So you guys belong to this very global group, which is why we love using Zoom, because we really need this very global platform. So I wanted to start by sharing my screen and just a very short video of a project I've been doing for 6 years with Iraqi refugee women,
We definitely use Health Rhythms. The two women who facilitate the group, who are Iranian and Iraqi, they both took Health Rhythms training. And at the same time, we really learned in the fire that we had to adapt what we were doing. You can imagine. So I thought you would like to see a little video of that project, which is called Shifa, which means healing. Oh, screen share stopped. Hold on, screen share. Take two. Oh, there it is. Share screen. Okay. Now you guys should be seeing my busy screen. Sorry, I'm still on my own little learning curve with Zoom as well. La la la. Okay, that's not the one I want to show you. Here it comes. Really, it's coming. All right. So let me show you this little video clip. Are you all seeing my screen? Nod if you see it. Okay, good. I know you can't talk, so just nod, and I will start it. The way we use drums for therapy is based on the fact that everyone has rhythm and everyone has a heartbeat. And it's the most accessible musical instrument. Basically, when you drum, you get to express your feelings, you get physical exercise, which is healthy, you connect with others, that community sense, camaraderie is important, and so it achieves a lot of benefits in a way that's fun and engaging. So the drum we use is frame drum, and it looks like this, and there's two easy sounds. Center is the low sound, and the room is the high sound, and it's called doom and talk. So the way drumming can be healing for people depends on whether it's a physical or emotional ailment, different kinds of levels of issues that people come with. I think one of the most important things in the case of refugees is trauma. And we know from research that having a sense of control and a sense of support is healing. So in our program Shifa, which means healing in Arabic, we give the women drums. We give people a chance. They ask questions and they answer through the drum. Because when English is your second language, it's really hard to express your feelings. But the drum is really everyone's primary language. So the origins of the Women's Refugee Drum Group really started when I went to Iraq in 2005 and did a peace project there. And then we had a very important study scientifically demonstrating that group drumming could change biology and reduce stress on a cellular level. And thanks to that research by Dr. Barry Bittman and a program called HealthRHYTHMS, I was able to train Ari in how to lead those protocol steps that she could now continue with the participants in El Cajon. I think that the drum ignites cathartic experiences. So sometimes women brought poems, sometimes women were able to step into real healing by crying or singing through their tears, and the women supported her with their drums. What I took away from that is that as much as I was there as a music therapist, there's cultural traditions of healing that refugees carry here into America, that I wanted to make space for that in my groups. Okay, so that is our project. And I was thrilled because after doing it for 6 years, we got really good coverage. I mean, that was in our mainstream newspaper. And then NAMM put it in their email blast to 3,000 distributors worldwide. So we're really getting the word out about Health Rhythms. So let me just move to the PowerPoint. Oh yeah, I have to share the screen again. Okay, sorry. I have to talk through each step. Share screen, okay. All right, got it. So here's what I want to talk about, and then we'll have some time for questions. If you have questions you can ask or ideas to share, which will be really fun. There we go. I have really, over the years, worked with all kind of populations. I'm sure you guys can relate. I just thought I'd do the opening some pictures of the different groups I've worked with over the years. Kids, love these diversity. Hong Kong's kids with special needs, Down syndrome. Veterans in wheelchairs. Koreans, well, this was really amazing. When I taught Health Rhythms Korea, I learned that they're having a real explosion in problems with depressed adolescents, and that teens have internet addiction. They're dying of internet addiction. They won't drink water or eat and sleep, and so they literally die from the internet. And so they were looking at how to use health rhythms with teens. And the reason I put this slide up here is because talk about adapting the protocol. This culture is very shy. Korean culture is really shy. People don't talk. When you go like, how do you feel? Any response? Nothing. So that's when I learned what I'm going to teach you tonight, which is dyad share. So if there's one thing that really helps break out of, I have to talk in front of a group, I'm shy, and build intimacy, it's one-to-one sharing. And we just don't do enough of that in this protocol. So we would do an experience, and I would just say, after we would do a drum circle and entrainment building, I would just say, turn to your neighbor, take 2 minutes to share what you experienced. And the whole room was a buzz with talking. Completely opposite of me saying, how did you feel? And no one said a word. And then, of course, the next steps, we're just making on-ramps, baby steps. The next step was to say, does anybody want to share that out loud with the group? And then people were more comfortable sharing. This is with a group of healthcare professionals. Very challenging group to work with because they have to unlearn a lot of things, Corporations, I did this event, workplace wellness event with Great Call, using a lot of entrainment building and guided imagery and inspirational beats. And of course, the refugee group. So I want to give you a couple of ideas that I learned, and these really came from Ari and Delquas, and they're leading the group. The first one is they're doing musical chairs as an icebreaker, and this really works. Now we have 20 to 22 refugees. They're from Syria, Iraq, and also Afghanistan. So there's probably 4 languages spoken in the circle, and as plus Farsi, so 5 right there, but 1 drum song, right? So she gets everybody up, and the rule is, if you lose in musical chairs, everybody's dancing and walking in a circle, and they're playing shakers. And this is all women, and they really need to move. So this is a secret way to get them moving. And then there's 1 drum, and I'm alone playing drum. And what happens is if you lose, if you don't get the chair, you join the pit band. So each round, the band grows by 2 people. So brilliant idea. And at the end, when we were down to 4 women and 3 chairs, oh my gosh, the energy in the room, because everyone's drumming now. It became so much fun to see them have fun playing and laughing and dancing. And the second one that they taught me, let me grab my drum to show you this, was a drum dedication to the pulse. And this is a very beautiful idea. So this is how they start entrainment building, is by playing a pulse, which I noticed they like the 1-2 rest kind. And then while we're playing it, people dedicate the pulse first to Syria, all the people in Syria that are struggling. Any refugee understands the story of other refugees. So they start by sending energy to Syria, and then women can call out places or people. I thought that was so brilliant of an idea that took a pulse and an entrainment and kind of added inspirational beats in the same way of who do you want to dedicate this to today? Third, yes, the drum lesson. You saw a little clip of me talking about it. Well, because we're all using frame drums, we just really, really do the drum lesson. Doom, talk, doom. And then I do a lot of call and response with the group. I just was with them on Tuesday, 2 days ago. So I'll go doom, 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 talk. And then they'll repeat after me, right? And then I point to a woman and she leads. And we had this problem where one woman would start something and then everyone would start the exact same thing as that one woman. So I had to keep breaking it up. Wait, now copy me this time, just showing that you can do anything you want. That kind of thing. But that call and response with the drum lesson, I feel like these women come from a frame drum culture. We're using all frame drums. The more articulate they become on this drum. So yeah, we always say Health Rhythms is not a drum lesson, but I'm finding that the giving that drum lesson actually really helps our health rhythms. They know how to hold the drums now. Everybody picks it up. They feel more comfortable with it. So that's a little variation right there. That's, you know, kind of taboo, right? Oh my gosh, we're giving a lesson. But how many of you have added drum lessons now and then or taught a rhythm? You know, we are teaching, we're facilitating in magic. We remember that. Teaching is when they follow you. Facilitating is when you follow them. And magic is when they follow each other. So musical chairs is full of magic. Dedicating the pulse is full of magic. Two more things. The inspirational beats question they ask is, what's one thing you would want new refugees to know? What's one wisdom you could pass on, answer on your drum? And then the guided imagery drumming, we don't guide it because there's so many language barriers. I mean, literally, if I'm speaking English, there's a woman translating to the Afghanistan people. You know, the Syrians are speaking Arabic. Some people speak Aramaic. It's complicated. So we went to a guided imagery experience where we just describe it ahead of time through the translators, and then I simply play my flute, and one person, and I always pick a woman in the circle when I can see they have a good pulse. I hand out the ever so popular 16-inch Bahia Buffalo drum. How many of us have that drum? It's just like, what would I do without that nice, deep? So then I hand that drum out and I just instruct everyone else through the translator to just relax in their chair. So I just had to report back to you because first of all, we got the news piece on Monday. I went to the class on Tuesday and this webinar was scheduled for Thursday. And I thought, well, there's the universe planning my webinar because these are variations that fit for this population. And I want to show you some main ways to think through that. Oh, and also a promotion, because tonight is a promotion call for the topics that I'll be covering in the mentoring group. It starts in April and the open enrollment ends March 31st. I think we're taking 20 people. And it's so, like I said, and you've heard from the people who took the class, it's a really beautiful way to get together and review things, take your facilitation to the next level, become accountable, and study together. Because the best learning is in the field, really is. So think first of all, who is your audience? Who are you working with and how do they fit on the scale, the continuum of care scale, right? Are they like really challenged, you know, high need, like high Alzheimer's closed unit, psych ward? What kind of level of care are you working in? Like the refugees, that's a very different thing. On the surface, they look very capable, but the trauma, level of trauma is very, very high. So when I think about that group, what's the biggest challenge and how can I prepare for it? So they're probably more on the scale, they're more on a higher scale, right? They're more a little bit on a wellness scale. They're living in their homes. They're not technically having a diagnosis, perhaps PTSD, but maybe you're working in an inpatient setting and it's a very high level of care. So you have to think about that, first of all, when you're adapting the protocol. The word adapt, to me, is also a metaphor of music, like when I adapt music. I transpose, I modulate, I change the tempo. There's a new movement. So I want you guys to feel flexible with the protocol. I want you to see how it's an arc that has so much room for substituting. It has so much room for it, but you want to make sure it's evidence-based and it fits your population. Those are the main things. I just wrote a few ideas of what special populations we work with. I'm sure there's some beyond this. Lately, I've been using this terminology to describe health rhythms, and it's 5 E's: engaging, entrainment, evidence-based, empowering, and energizing. It's kind of some buzzwords I've been coming up with lately. And before we go through the adapting, I wanted to pause and just certainly honor Dr. Barry Bittman and his incredible work in creating this protocol and this training program with me. And I'm always anchoring this work in these 7 key things that create the evidence of it. Even you heard me in the interview say it's exercise, it's camaraderie. I'm always referencing this list. I love that list. Okay, so let's get into the protocol. Just a quick review. the highlighted ones, the wellness exercise, number 7, inspirational beats, and the repeated wellness exercise, those 3 steps were added after the first study, right? We were added those 3 steps because we wanted to test the Beck depression inventory and the anxiety inventory. So always remember when you're worried about time that those 3 were the add-ons to the protocol. These are the keys we're going to talk about. And we'll go through each one of them. First one, without a doubt, it's the goals. And you'll notice as you work, if you're the one coming into an agency, the agency has their goals for the clients and the clients have their goals for themselves. Everybody know what I'm talking about? I think the agency's like, we really want the refugees to learn to speak English. That's their only goal, really. Of course, they want them to have emotional connection to each other, but their primary goal is speaking English. So we put that in. At the end of the session, we have a 1-word share, and we say you're not allowed to say the word happy, because everybody just goes happy, or you can't copy anyone else's word. So we're doing language skills. But what's the women's goal? Why did they come and drum? So think about, first of all, the doname. Is this behavioral, cognitive, psychological, all these things? And then you might have a theme that you can weave in from the agency. Like sometimes there's the 12 steps, of course, with recovery. That makes for a great Health Rhythm series. Or there may be 6 values. Or we've identified 4 coping things. You need to be speaking English. You need to get a job, whatever it is. Childcare, support, and empowerment in your marriage. We could make a series out of that. And also within the goals and needs, I mentioned to use buzzwords. I'm learning this buzzword, trauma-informed. That was a new one I learned. Saying the Maslow burnout scale, or it's evidence-based. That all kind of goes in the goals. So take a second, take a breath, think about a population you work with or you have in mind. What is the goal of working with that population? Their goal, agency goal, and what's the need? Right? So sometimes Health Rhythms is the Trojan horse to get to language skills, or it's the fun way to get people moving and exercising, right? So we want to be goal directed. That's an important thing in how I adapt my protocol. So I adapt it by saying 1-word share. You can't say happy, and everyone has to say a different word. And their vocabulary amazed me on Tuesday. Women were saying peaceful, restful, joy. I was amazed. Like, oh, you have this whole vocabulary. Salam, Number 2, relevant research. Secretly informed, you certainly might know that information without speaking it out loud, but knowing some research, like having that evidence-based anchor. Staying up on research. I was just thinking today, Dr. Bittman's first study is now 18 years old, and that's getting old. So I want to stay up on trauma-informed studies, and I want to be able to make sure, and all you have to do is Google it. Google, trauma research music, or trauma research creative expression, or, these kind of terms where you can just stay a little bit curious. What is the new research coming out about Alzheimer's and neuroplasticity? Haven't we found anything out about that? I believe that Posit Science found that novel auditory stimulus is the most powerful thing for neuroplasticity in the brain's ongoing learning, which means learning a new instrument or learning a new language. So it's good to know that kind of research. And the third thing is the instruments. Definitely one of the big adaptations of Health Rhythms is what instruments you use. So we chose not to use djembes. We chose to not put a loud vibrating drum between the legs of women who might have trauma or sexual abuse. So you have to be sensitive to that. And the great thing about tubanos is we have that nice space. So it's away from the body, we're connecting to it, but we have a sense of control. In our project, we use frame drums, all frame drums. And think about what instruments you use. Are there instruments that are contraindicated? Yeah, pretty much. Cowbells are a no for autism. And a lot of the sound sensitivity populations that we work with, sensory overload, Think about what is indicated and what is not indicated. I think a lot about mallets versus hands. I remember working with these really difficult teen boys in a gig I used to have in Connecticut. And so I just simply took all the mallets out of the circle, and it was a much better experience. Now they had that hand-to-hand contact with the drum, more sensory, less loud, less beating, you know, because a therapist told me, you think it's so great that they're beating the drums, but beating anything isn't healing at all. Like, it's just learning to beat something like a drum compared to a person. That's not really helping. You're still beating out something. So what if you learn playing your hands? I'm also interested, of course, in colors, sensory stimulation, the variety and the sonic diversity. Like, I want people's sound to speak. So what we now use for our equipment with the Iraqi Refugee Women's Project, we have a bag of shakers. Everybody gets a fruit shaker. We have finger cymbals because these ladies know how to play them. So we had to track down finger cymbals and ankle bells. And we use all frame drums. And we have 2 Bahia buffalo drums. And we have 3 doumbeks, or small festival drums. And those really, that goblet-shaped drum, they're very familiar with playing. So that's our composition. And I bring the flute, I bring the kalimba, I bring the guitar, the strum stick. And now at the end, the facilitators bring this. I don't know how many of you use this kind of thing. It's like you plug in your cell phone to it and it plays music loud for you, or a Bluetooth speaker. So that at the end, sometimes the women want to dance and they want to play their song from YouTube, from Iraq, so we can actually play it and dance. So I'm learning, okay, this is the modern technology world. Noah's Ark simply means I like to not have 1 pair of finger cymbals, I want 2. I don't want anyone feeling alone. I think about how to hold the drum, as I mentioned, and shared or individual. There's times that I like people to share an instrument. Like the drum table. How many of you have a drum table? That's an immediate invitation to share. Or even putting the Bahia 16-inch buffalo drum on a djembe stand with 4 mallets in the center. 4 women are going to join, and I could do something with Iraqi Muslim, Iraqi Chaldean, Syrian, and Afghanistan, and Iranian. I could put the women in a group with 5 mallets in the center. So you can sculpt things with that shared instrument thinking. It could be a caregiver with their loved one. It could be a staff member. We need 1 staff to join here in the middle of our circle. I hardly have to say anything more than this. Number 4 is it self-selecting or referred, or somewhere in the middle? Like our refugee group is technically referred, but they're somewhat self-selecting. I mean, they could blow it off, but technically they're referred. They're referred by License to Freedom, and there is a carrot. They do get points for attending the drum circle towards their status and their welfare funding. So there is a little hook. But I honestly think this is probably should have been number 1 on my list. If I'm going to go in and do health rhythms, the first thing I think about is, did they choose to be here, or are they referred? How much level of interest do I have? If they're referred, I have to do more to sell it at the beginning. I have to lower my expectations. They're not going to just jump right in. I have to just take a little bit different tact, more on-ramps, more icebreakers, take it easy. If it's a self-selecting group, we've come to learn health rhythms. Yay, you know, they dive in, they're ready to go. A lot of times we start with referrals and we start with referrers and we convert them to selecting. You know what I mean? They start loving it and they start knowing and they can't wait. 2 more things. Number 5 is rhythms and songs. We want to be demographically informed. I came up with that little term, meaning if you're working with teens, you know, you want to know how to play the classic hip hop beat. You know, at least know a couple of things that are correct for the demographics. How do you learn that? Hopefully you can access a relative, you can, you know, Google, you can Spotify, you can find out what it is that is in. I'm really finding the biggest difference between 6/8 patterns and 4/4 patterns. Like 4/4 and 6/8 1. So playing off of those things like 1, 2, buckle your shoe, 3, 4, shut the door. But just making sure your health rhythms fits the demographic picture of your people, using songs and rhythms from that culture, and making sure you know when to stop. You can overexert people who are elderly and frail. The last story is last step of how I want you to think about adapting is contraindications. Do no harm. You can hurt people. I mean, it's less likely than someone walking in with a needle, like a nurse has to be a little more careful probably than a drummer, but still, sound sensitivity, trauma and triggers. My story of the gentleman who had rheumatoid arthritis, he came into my group and he was playing the shaker and I was like, you did so good, Mr. Davis. And the next day he couldn't move because he'd overexerted his shoulder. And I kept like encouraging him, like, yeah, keep the beat going. Look at Mr. Davis, yay. I was doing all the things we learned, right? Cheering him on, letting him set the beat. He couldn't move. And the OT staff called me into their office and just said, you really screwed up. And, you know, we want you to understand when someone has rheumatoid arthritis, you have to be more pacing for them. So this is probably where we can most learn our highest credibility in our carrying of this work. From the beginning, Dr. Bittman and I were in a radio interview and people said, okay, does this help people with autism? Does this help people with lung cancer? Does this help people with this and this? And Dr. Bittman said, penicillin doesn't help everyone. And I loved that answer. He was like, you know, even penicillin is contraindicated in some cases. He was basically saying, no, it doesn't. There's people with Alzheimer's who will become more agitated. So we want to be the clinicians who say, I don't think this is going to fit for Mr. Jones, you know. There are people that are not indicated to attend this group. Maybe we do one-to-one with them, or maybe they choose not to be in the group, or they just put in a headphone and listen to their own music during that time. There's a lot of options. But it's very powerful to recognize that there's places that this doesn't belong, right? Some of those we know ahead, some of those emerge during the group. Final tips, the size of the group really makes a difference, I've noticed. I mean, when I have 22 women, it's like, it requires more energy from me versus like a 10 or 12 people I've noticed. So I think I've learned to really set my boundaries. In Nashville, they wanted to give me 2 of the different houses together because they're like, the drummer's here, let's give them everyone. And it would have been 40 people. You know, and I just said, no. And they're like, we have enough instruments, right? And I was like, yes, but it's not going to be the quality of the group. So we did 2 sessions. So I'm really learning to set those boundaries with my clients. And if I have a small group, I use a drum track. Really helps fill it in. If it's a large group, I use, again, the dyad sharing I mentioned, because if it's more than 20 people and I say, anybody want to share, who's going to have time? So by sharing one-to-one, I've now covered space for everyone to have that Penny Baker research, verbalizing, sharing. So those are my 2 main strategies per size of group that I adapt. I'm also going to be sending you a free session plan that I developed with adults with recovery, and it includes the great question for inspirational beats about how you handle cravings. And I'll never forget when we asked this, what do cravings sound like? And this woman picked up the ocean drum. I don't know if you've ever heard the ocean drum shooken. I mean, it's like intense. Like, you know, that's what the cravings sound like. So the next question was, well, how does it sound when you are able to find an alternative to that? It's always really good to come up with all inspirational beats questions if you're going to use that step of the protocol, which another thing we can talk about tonight is, when do you leave out steps, right? But again, don't forget to sign up. I'm sure Alyssa has sent you all the information for how to do that. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that. Back to meeting. Hold on. I'm sure it's here. Bless you.
Thank you. So you can hear us.
Well, there's somebody who's unmuted. I don't know how that happened.
Oh.
Okay, I'm muting everyone. All right, so wow, that was great. It's 4:42. Let me just check my list. So those are the 6 keys that I put together for you all to look at. Any suggestions for youth in a juvenile detention center? Okay, let me just first look at this, scroll through the chat bar real quick. Yes, the tape is being recorded. Okay, I'm just, give me a second because I'm just catching up with the scroll. Scott in Drumstrong is here. Somebody named Lori from Pennsylvania, good, okay. Yes, okay, so Rufus was asking about the rhythms from Iraq. You're right, some of them are in 5 and 7 and 10. Raise your bar on your own skills, that's what I have to say. Yes, the 5 E's are entrainment, evidence-based, energy, expression, and I'll have to check the other one, but engaging, right? And I'll send that out. Empowering. Okay, so then Scott, you had something to share, recycled plastic drum tables, really? Okay, let me see where you are. Scott, can you mute yourself and share about that? Unmute, there you go.
Unmute.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we build recycled plastic playground equipment, but more specifically lately, musical instruments on playgrounds. And the drum tables are Remo high, the heavy gauge Mylar heads, so relatively childproof. At the same time, they have extremely good sound, as you know, most remote products do. They are sanitizable. We put them on casters so they can be rolled into an environment, be it playground, classroom, auditorium, or care facility. And it truly encourages people to play together, play nice together, or not.
I agree. Thank you for your comment. I totally agree. I think that's a really important thing is when you get people sharing an instrument. It is such a deep thing, and I always share about what happened to me at the 1-year anniversary of Columbine High School where I didn't bring enough drums, and it was a private drumming event for the kids and their parents, kids who were in the library during the high school shooting, and I didn't bring enough drums, and then I thought this is the perfect lemonade from Lemons, which is all parents sharing with their kids, and that was so powerful. So great thoughts about, you know, how the instruments we use create their own activity. Someone else asked about working with youth in a juvenile detention center, and Rufus answered perfectly, you know, take the Health Rhythms adolescent protocol. That is an adaptation. You know, that protocol training is like saying, how do I adapt Health Rhythms? But it's also very evidence-based, and it fits for a juvenile detention center because it's a closed group. You need a repeated group for 6 sessions. So it wouldn't work as well if you had a, you know, changing group, but it works great if you have a incarcerated population, and it was targeting a lot of those topics. So I would love you to share the musical chairs idea. Okay, who's Jim Turk? Jim Turk. I will find you and track you down. Jim?
Yes.
Okay, where are you calling from, and what population do you work with?
Am I unmuted now?
You're
Can you
unmuted.
hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, and I do a lot of work with seniors at various assisted living and nursing homes and memory care units. But I also work a lot through VSA Wisconsin, which is a state arm of bringing music and arts to people with disabilities. And so we do a lot of stuff with kids and adults with disabilities, depending on where I'm at. But I think they would love the musical chairs thing.
Yeah. Okay, I'll explain it a little more because it's very takes logistics. It's a logistics thing. Okay, so what you do is, first of all, we have a rug in the center, a circular rug, and the shakers and the drums are in the center. Then we have Christine's chair and drums on the next 3 chairs, frame drums, waiting on the 3. So it's very clear, like if you don't win in the next round, you go over here and pick up the drum and play. Make sense? Everybody else gets up. I have a doumbek, and I start a pretty up-tempo beat, and everybody's dancing and playing their shaker as they go around the circle. So I'm the pit band. And I stop suddenly, and I'm teaching myself to stop mid-sentence instead of, an obvious wait till the end of the beat. So I stop at a sudden point, and everybody has to run to their chair, musical chairs. And if you didn't get your chair, you come over and join the pit band. So then the co-facilitator pulls out 2 more chairs. Now there's going to be 2 more people joining the pit band. Every round, 2 chairs pull out until we get to like 5, and now it gets really exciting. Does that make sense? It took quite a bit of time, but I was saying to the facilitators, like, that was a very powerful icebreaker. It took maybe 15 minutes, but at the end of it, I asked through the translator to ask the women how they felt, and there were such powerful comments. Like, it felt so good to laugh, it felt good to play, it reminded us of being children. There was a lot of awareness that we don't move enough, we don't laugh enough. And then by the end, 19 drummers and 1 person sitting in 2 people fighting over 1 chair, so it's really fun. And then that person won, and of course they were like, "What's my gift?" So the facilitator brought chocolate, which was very cute. But anyway, that was I thought, a great idea. So other comments or questions? And basically, this is a lot how I wanted you to all kind of get a taste for how the mentoring program runs. We meet once a month. It's not a big time commitment. We cover topics like how to make themes, how to adapt your program, how to use the instruments. I really like the topic about painting thematic groups because you really want to create themes. Like our theme on Tuesday was Nahwal because it was the Iranian New Year and the Afghanistan New Year. So we were talking about what's your New Year's resolution, play it on your drum. So we had a theme that kind of was very clear, but I like to teach people how to make health rhythms not feel like 10 steps, how to really make it feel like more water, more flowing. How do you flow through things? And I think one of the big dilemmas for me with the protocol is time. Anybody else run into that? Like, how do I get it in the time I'm given? Time is a factor. And a lot of facilities have given you a limited time. You get an hour. And you're trying to cover the whole thing. And so how do we eliminate pieces? When I worked in the corporate setting and I had 20 minutes, I just did 1 protocol piece, guided imagery for 15 minutes. That was the program. So we do have the opportunity to change it a lot of ways, or start to ask for an hour and a half. That's what I did in the recovery group. I said, can I have an hour and a half? I might not use it all, but could I have that? Even an hour and 15 minutes makes me feel so much happier. So I feel like I can let people talk more. The talking takes time, right? The logistic of pausing, letting people share, dyad share. So I hope that the main things you learned from tonight is some new icebreaker ideas. This idea of dyad sharing, which is please try it. Even with seniors, it's so great when you say share with your neighbor how you felt or what you experienced just now. Sharing with a neighbor. The idea, as we talked about, sharing instruments. So what instruments do you use? And how do you adapt this protocol? Please don't feel like there's any taboo that you're breaking. As long as nobody's in a contraindicated situation that's harmful, please know that this can be your program. People call this anything from relaxation. I call my group Rhythms of Radiance, or Susie demonstrated how she brings in a poem to start her groups. And I know Rufus really, flourishes with himself, and Brad too, these guys that I know, and Becky that have been in my groups that have really, really started to brand their health rhythms based on who they are and knowing that population. That's the exciting thing about this work. There'll always be another group that wants to experience this, that will bring out a new trick in your bag that you didn't even know you had. So are there any other questions? You can raise your hand or type it in the chat bar. Or comments? Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I'm so glad we got together, and you can share one word if you'd like on the chat bar of what you learned from today. I'm going to make the recording available tomorrow. Yeah, we all need this. I think that's the other thing about the connecting in the mentoring group is it just keeps you inspired. You know, usually we're the only ones doing this kind of thing. And so it's nice to remember that there's 135 people on this call, like also doing this kind of work, or at least we have 34 people at this moment that are doing, you know, these kind of things together. Would the adolescent protocol be adapted to juvenile detention? Length of stay is currently 2 weeks. Corrections, which is long-term and conducive to, I think you would, again, I think you would have to try it out. I would imagine it would work for 2 weeks. Yeah, I think you could take that patterning and learn different skills and different themes. The adolescent protocol has 6 themes, and it also has this technique of the homework. So people are given some object to practice with for the week. Maybe it's a cotton ball, or it's a jewel, or it's some kind of little item that brings a rock. It brings back a remember. That would have to be something you would have to check with the corrections, because usually there's rules about that, I'm sure. But I think generally speaking, it's a good thing to check out with adolescents. The other thing I want to say as we close is it's really great to, you know, network where you work. Like a lot of times where we work, they have grand rounds, or they have a networking event, or you can take someone to lunch and learn more about what they're learning. Or like I've just had this great chance to take a webinar on trauma-informed psychotherapy, and I just brought all these ideas to me. And one of their big things was repetition and rhythm. They even said the rhythm in the webinar. And I was like, yes, yes, great. Rufus said, I want to brush up on my 3/4 rhythms in hip hop. Excellent. We want to be linguists of rhythm. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you, Alyssa, Dr. Bittman, for all of you who are been through my mentoring group. I hope you'll all sign up. It's really, I think, a very affordable program, and you get to spend 9 months digging into deeper facilitation skills, growing your business, because I always love to talk about marketing, selling, and promoting your work. And that we can just keep proliferating this work. I mean, if we can get coverage on doing health rhythms with refugees, which we all know in the context of our current political system and the news media is not getting a really good picture. It was really exciting to bring something good. By the way, that is a big part of Health Rhythms marketing. Is the San Diego Reporter said, I'm the immigration reporter, and I haven't been to something so positive in years when I'm covering immigration. So she came and drummed with us 3 times. One of the highlights was the woman who was a reporter, Kate, when we were doing some entrainment building, she got out and break danced for all the women.
Wow.
So it's pretty fun. So the sign-up deadline is March 31st. But yeah, we never know what magic might happen in Health Rhythms. I'm sure we all could tell stories like Brad told about the woman who wants to buy a drum, even though she's just in her wheelchair hunched over, she's telling her daughter. And all I keep thinking is, that'll be the day when long-term care centers are like, could you tell that lady to keep the drumming down next to me? All right. So with that, happy drumming, you guys, and thanks for coming. And I look forward to seeing you in the mentoring group. Bye-bye.